Hey y'all, this is Jessica with Bless Your Heart. Let's do a peekaboo on a glass tumbler today. To start out, I did go in and do a very light sanding on my tumbler today. Nothing a lot, just very light. And I'm going to go in and paint the entire tumbler with this Prime Time. Once that dries, I'm going to go in and use glass slippers and high roller, both from the glitter guy. And I'm going to use the Epoxy Method as my glitter adhesion today. Normally when you use the Epoxy Method, you want a very thin layer of epoxy over the entire cup. Since I'm using two different glitters and one of those is a very chunky glitter, I'm doing just a slight bit more than what I normally use for the Epoxy Method. For my first glitter, I am not going full coverage, but I do want this color to show through the entire tumbler. So I'm going a lot coverage, not full coverage. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go in with the fine, and I am going full coverage, top to bottom and side to side with this glitter. When I'm happy with the glitter coverage, I am going to roll my cup up in a sheet of copy paper. That's just to kind of lay down as much of that chunky as I can. And once this layer of epoxy dries, I do put another layer of epoxy on to get ready for the next step. While we're waiting for this layer of epoxy to dry, let me show you how I make my template. So I go into Silhouette Studio and I make a box in the dimensions that I want my template to be on my tumbler. I change that to a different color and then I send it to the back. That way my forward pieces will be my actual hearts. I go into the Shapes panel and just make me hearts in different sizes. I place them around this box that is going to be roughly the size of the template that I want. And I make sure I like all the placements. When I like that, I go into the offset panel and I make an offset of my original image, and normally it's 0.040. Then I go back in and piece by piece grab my original image again and I make an inset of 0.040. And what this does is gives me a thicker line that's going to go inside and outside my heart, and that's just going to give me a nice crisp finish. If I'm happy with how this template looks, I send everything to the cut panel. And my general cut settings in Silhouette Studio is a blade depth of 3, a force of 16, and a speed of 5. For the actual hearts, I'm going to use just blue stencil vinyl. And for the outlines, I'm going to go in and use whatever it is that I want to outline my hearts with. And this is what we end up with. That outline is going to be nice and chunky, so it's going to encapsulate that heart very well. To get our template onto our tumbler, we're going to just put it on some transfer tape. I like this with the grids. It kind of helps keep me a little bit balanced. I'm going to wrap it around the cup to make sure that I like what it looks like. Now this is not a seamless pattern, so we are probably going to have to go and finagle some of those hearts, and that's okay. But we're going to place this the best way we can and how we like to look at it, and then we're going to move on to the next step. To put the actual template onto our tumbler, we are going to use the Hinge Method, and this is just like every other time we use the Hinge Method. We're going to cut a little bit off. We're going to wrap it around our tumbler again to make sure that we like how it's going to fit. We're going to use our squeegee to press that image onto that epoxied surface. And as we do that, the backing is going to naturally just come on off. And then we're going to check out the handiwork to see if we need to move any of those hearts, move them if we need to, and then we're going to get ready for paint. I took the cup outside and just spray painted it with Sweet Pea from Rust-Oleum. I am going to go in and use hot glue on all of my peekaboo places just so I can find them again. For my glitter choices for the top is going to be the Glitter Guy Taffy Twist and Candy Crushing. Now these are both chunkies, so this is going to be a thick cup. I'm going to use the Epoxy Method for my glitter adhesion, and I'm just going to slather the whole cup with some epoxy and start laying down some more glitter. After I put on way too much epoxy, I'm going to go in with our chunkiest glitter. I'm not going full coverage, but I am going a lot of coverage. So I want a lot of this to show through. These two colors look really good together. This next one has a little bit more fines in it, or smaller chunks. So I am going full coverage with this one, top to bottom and side to side. Once we're happy with the coverage, we're going to wrap this up to try to press down some of those chunkies, and then we're going to start the process of removing all those peekaboos. That is going to be a little tedious because there is way too much epoxy on this tumbler. So as soon as I get all of my peekaboos removed, I do go automatically in and put it on a turner. After this initial layer of epoxy dries, I do go in and do some cleanup with the paint that kind of seeped underneath our stencils. I do not have another layer of epoxy on here yet, and I'm just using a toothpick with a little bit of cotton on the end because that's what I had handy. You can use your little tiny paintbrushes or a Q-tip, whatever you have handy. But that is what I'm doing now, is just cleaning all of this up. Once I get this cleaned up, I do go in with a layer of polycrylic and kind of seal down all that chunky glitter. I don't really want any of this pink glitter in the green glitter. It's going to happen, but the best way to ensure that we don't have a whole bunch of transfer is just to seal your glitter at every step. This also helps with the epoxy process because sometimes your glitter is so shiny that it wants to repel your epoxy. And this helps that not happen. So I'm going all over all of the pink glitter with a very thin layer of polycrylic, and we're going to get 2 layers of epoxy on this tumbler to get ready for the next step. Now that our epoxy is dry, we can move on to the outlines of our hearts. Now this is where doing an offset and an inset is going to help us almost correct any fudges that we have. So with doing your offset and your inset a little bit thicker like we did in the beginning, that is going to give us a little bit of wiggle room on those kind of blurred edges of our image. So this makes it look nice and crisp and clean, and it is a very easy process to put this on. You just find the correct heart that it goes to, line your points at the inside of the heart and the outside of the heart, or the top and the bottom, however you want to look at it. You line those up, and the rest of it should just fall into place. Now there will be some that you have to do a little bit of maneuvering with if they're like at the top of the cup where there's a little curve, or at the bottom of the cup where there's a curve. You will have to kind of mess with that vinyl just a little bit, but you shouldn't have to mess with it too much. So we're just going to go heart by heart and put our little outlines on there. Once all of your outlines are laid down, check out your handiwork, because you just made this super cute cup and you should enjoy the fruits of your labor. After we lay those down, I am going to go in and do another small layer of polycrylic. That's just because we've touched all over this vinyl, and that's also going to help the epoxy process again, because sometimes the oils in your fingers want to repel the epoxy. So once we get this done, we're going to move on to the next step after this layer of polycrylic dries. After the polycrylic dries, I do go in and put a layer of epoxy on, and then I do a really good sanding. So what I'm going to do now is put on those inside hearts that were in our offsets. And I'm just going to place a few of those here and there. I'm not going full coverage with those. I still want to be able to see both of this, the Peekaboo and the top layer of glitter. But I have these, so I might as well use them. So we're going to place just, 4 or so, maybe 5 of these hearts all around the cup. And then once that's done, we are going to epoxy this entire tumbler until smooth. And here we go. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me today. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.